There is a point where even the deepest understanding begins to feel unnecessary, not because it was wrong, but because it has served its purpose. Understanding belongs to the mind, and the mind has already been seen through. At this depth, nothing is being clarified anymore. Nothing is being resolved. What remains does not need clarity. It does not need resolution. It is already complete without explanation. Earlier, it felt like something was being discovered. Then it felt like something was being remembered. Then it felt like something was dissolving. Now even those movements feel like too much description. There is no sense of a process unfolding, no sense of layers being removed, no sense of arriving anywhere. There is simply what is, without reference. The mind wants to ask, what is this? But that question assumes there is something separate that can be named. And here, naming collapses. Any attempt to point becomes another gesture that adds something unnecessary. Silence is closer, but even silence is not held onto. Silence appears and disappears like everything else. At this depth, the sense of being an experiencer is gone. Experience still appears, but there is no one inside receiving it. Sounds arise without a listener. Thoughts arise without a thinker. Feelings move without an owner. Life unfolds without an observer standing apart from it. There is no center from which experience radiates. Experience is not happening to anything. It is simply happening. This is where even the idea of awareness becomes transparent. Awareness was once a refuge, a resting place, a way to step out of identification. But now awareness is no longer emphasized, not because it disappeared, but because it no longer stands apart from what appears. There is no awareness watching experience. There is no experience occurring in awareness. Those distinctions belong to a phase where subtle separation still existed. Here, there is no inside and no outside, no subject and no object, no witness and no witnessed. These were useful pointers, but now they fall away naturally, without effort. What remains does not need to be framed. Daily life continues exactly as before, yet nothing is the same. You wake up, but there is no sense of entering the day. The day is already happening. You move through tasks, but there is no psychological weight attached to action. Work happens without internal commentary. Rest happens without guilt. Speech arises without premeditation. Silence follows without intention. There is no sense of being carried through life and no sense of carrying life. The body functions. Intelligence operates. Responses arise when needed. But there is no narrative tying these movements together into a personal story. Each moment is complete in itself and leaves no residue. This is why memory loses its grip. Memory still functions for practical purposes, but it no longer forms identity. Past events are not used to define the present. There is no psychological continuity stitching moments together into a sense of self. Each moment stands alone, fresh, unburdened. Future also loosens here. Planning may occur, but anticipation does not. Hope does not lean forward. Fear does not project. The future is no longer treated as a place where fulfillment might arrive or disaster might strike. It is simply another idea appearing now without authority. This is where suffering ends at its root. Pain may still arise in the body. Difficulty may still appear in circumstances. Loss may still be felt, but suffering requires ownership. It requires someone to whom pain belongs. When no owner is found, pain remains sensation, not suffering. Difficulty remains circumstance, not personal burden. Even emotions move differently here. They arise fully, without suppression, but they do not crystallize into identity. Anger may appear, but it does not become my anger. Sadness may arise, but it does not become my story. Joy may appear, but it does not become something to hold on to. Everything moves freely because nothing is being claimed. At this depth, love is no longer an emotion directed towards something. It is the absence of separation. Compassion is no longer a response chosen by a person. It is the natural movement of wholeness encountering itself in different forms. Kindness happens without intention. Understanding happens without effort. There is also no fear of losing this. Loss implies possession, and nothing here is possessed. There is no state to maintain, no realization to protect, no clarity to guard. Everything that appears is allowed to appear and disappear freely. This is why the question, "Can this be lost?" no longer arises. What could be lost if nothing was gained? What could be forgotten if nothing was learned? What could end if nothing began? At this depth, even death is seen differently, not conceptually, not philosophically, but directly. Death appears as an idea, as an image, as a thought, and it is seen to have no owner. There is no instinctive recoil, no existential panic. Not because of belief in continuation, but because there is no one positioned to end. The sense of being someone located in a body softens completely. The body is experienced, but not as me. Sensation arises, but it does not define identity. The body is part of what appears, not the center of what appears. This is why humility arises naturally here, not as an attitude, but as the absence of self-importance. There is no sense of being special, no sense of being awakened, no sense of having arrived at something others have not. Those comparisons feel irrelevant. There is no ladder anymore. Teaching itself becomes light. Words are used, but without weight, without insistence, without expectation. There is no need to convince, correct, or persuade. If words land, they land. If they do not, nothing is lost. Truth does not depend on transmission. This is the stage where even the phrase non-dual feels unnecessary. Dual and non-dual are conceptual opposites. They rely on contrast. What remains here does not require contrast to exist. It is not defined by what it is not. There is also no longer any interest in mapping stages. Stages imply progression. Progression implies time. Time implies movement from somewhere to somewhere else. All of that has collapsed. There is no movement, only appearance. This does not feel like emptiness. It feels like fullness without edges. Not fullness as an experience, but fullness as the absence of lack. Nothing is missing because nothing is expected. This is why rest is so deep here. Not rest as recovery, but rest as the absence of effort. There is no tension holding experience together, no strain trying to manage life. Everything is allowed to be exactly as it is, and yet nothing is passive. Life is vibrant, responsive, alive, creative, but it is creativity without a creator, intelligence without an owner, movement without a mover. This is what was always being pointed to, beneath every teaching, beneath every practice, beneath every scripture and method. Not something to reach, but something to stop obscuring. There is no final statement that captures this, no ultimate sentence that completes the journey. Any attempt to conclude feels artificial, because nothing is concluding. There is simply the quiet certainty that nothing was ever wrong. Nothing needed to be fixed. Nothing needed to be healed at the level of being. Life continues. Breathing happens, seeing happens, living happens, but no one is behind it. No one is ahead of it. No one is inside it. And in that, there is nothing left to say.